Hello everyone. Last week I did my captain ranking update after finishing the Bleach manga, so now let's do the same for the lieutenants. Like with their superiors, I ranked them twice before this, and that was before the 1,000-Year Blood War, so let's see if this conflict changed my mind on any of the lieutenants. As always, this is based solely on my personal favorites and least favorites and not about power ranking or anything like that. These rankings are also not always permanent, and I fluctuate quite constantly day to day sometimes. And hey, maybe whatever changes the anime makes in the final core is gonna alter them. We'll see. For now, this is where I'm at. Just like with the captain ranking, this is only including the lieutenants from the final arc and not the ones we see at the very end in the last two chapters. I'm sure my boy Ikaku was great as a lieutenant, but for the purpose of this list, he will not be ranked since he was only a lieutenant after the time skip. Now that the rules are out of the way, let's get to ranking. At number 14, I have Okikiba. I almost forgot to include him, but hey, he still counts. I jokingly refer to this guy as Chojuro 2.0 because that's how he felt when he was first introduced. Another older guy with a mustache that's awaiting Yamamoto's orders. Obviously, he was the literal replacement for Chojuro, but almost a little too similar for me. It's like he was a spare tire waiting to be slotted in, and we're supposed to pretend like nothing changed. Like Yamamoto's like, alright, I have grieved Chojuro, now I'm gonna pretend like he's still here. And then later, he becomes a co-lieutenant with Nanao when Shunsui becomes head captain of Squad 1, and I think that's kind of interesting because Shunsui, it feels like, is doing everything he can, mainly to keep Nanao close, but also maybe he doesn't think Okikiba can do it. I'm mostly joking, but outside of being a new mustached older gentleman, we haven't seen Okikiba do much of anything whatsoever, but I'll acknowledge that I could be making the same mistake with him that I made with my judgment of the man he replaced, but we'll get to that in a bit. Maybe Okikiba has an awesome past or cool abilities or was part of some badass Yamamoto inner circle that has stuck together into their golden years, but as of right now, I don't know about any of that with any certainty, so sorry, bottom of the list. At number 13, I have Isane. I wish I liked her more. She's fine, but she's easily the most forgettable of any of the lieutenants to me outside of Okikiba, who barely showed up anyway. Isane has been around since the Soul Society arc, and I feel like I should remember her better than I do. She did have a great moment or two centering around Unohana's sacrifice, but I don't know, nothing Isane did in the series really stands out much. She was unfortunately given so little attention and never really a proper battle or really any standout moments. The closest things to fights were like being part of the group that Ichigo single-handedly beat up when he saved Rukia, or in the war when the vanishing point Ganal was scaring her, but that ended up not really being her battle anyway. And as far as moments for Asane, the one that sticks out most is her reaction to learning Unohana died, which was great, but nothing that really knocked my socks off or anything. It was a good moment, but it was also kind of a big Kenpachi Zaraki moment too. It was nice, but I don't know. She just kind of got nothing throughout the whole series. She's fine, she seems nice, I'm glad she's there to heal people and for her future promotion, but Isane could easily slip my mind 10 minutes from now. Sorry. At number 12, I have Chojuro. And I almost didn't even include him on this list, but you know what, he was still technically one of the lieutenants at the very beginning of the arc, before he was brutally taken off the board when the Vondenreich arrived. It's kind of strange that I kept waiting for Chojuro to do something interesting throughout the series, only for his first real moment to shine ended up being him skewered to a wall and killed. I gave him a lot of crap throughout the series because of how little he seemed to do, despite being the head captain's lieutenant, only to have to kind of eat my words a little bit when the anime showed him dealing one of the most significant blows to Yuabaha 1,000 years ago, where Chojuro was hiding amongst the corpses and stabbed Yuabaha through the back. Pretty awesome. Hell, him being killed first might have been an extremely petty personal request from the Quincy King. Make sure this guy doesn't have a chance to do that again. And then we got some insight into how powerful he was too with his Bankai, and the anime gave a little more elaboration to that as well. And people were talking about how great he was at the funeral. So retroactively, Chojuro kind of becomes cooler. I just wish we knew some of these things and understood how awesome he was before he died, but maybe that's the tragedy, I suppose. You don't know what you got till it's gone. If Chojuro displayed any of this greatness in the present storyline, he could be a lot higher on this list. I could have loved a Douglas Fairbanks looking badass, a fencer, a Count Dooku type, but instead it took him dying and attending his funeral for me to really appreciate and respect Chojuro. Tragic? Sure. A bit of a letdown? Yeah. At number 11, Omaida. Omaida is one of the most jokey characters in Bleach. He's lazy, gluttonous, entitled, unserious. He's the kind of guy that's meant to get on the nerves of everyone else, even the readers, but I still think putting this wrecking ball of a guy on the squad that's all about stealth is legitimately funny, and I enjoy his antics for the most part, along with his juxtaposition against his much more serious captain. What I really liked, though, was his small spotlight in the Thousand Year Blood War that is actually really different between the manga and anime in a kind of a substantial way. It wasn't that Omaida unleashed some Bankai or had a great fight or anything. It was getting to see him try to defend his family. Now, the complicated part of discussing the scene is that it's actually quite different between mediums, as the manga and the anime handle BG9 attacking Omaida's sister a little bit differently. In the manga, our resident Quincy Red Ribbon Army boy impales Omaida's little sister before Omaida tries to defend her, and mostly fails doing so, but attempts. While in the anime, instead of her getting impaled, he takes the blow instead of his sister. It was probably a censoring thing or something, but it does kind of significantly change that scene. Not only does it make BG9 a little less terrifying and a little less vicious, but it also makes Omaida both more protective, but also it takes a bit away from, seeing him so outraged by his sister being hurt. So it does change his drive in that scene. It's both about protecting his sister, but there was something really powerful, I thought, about him trying to save her, but I also like him getting in the way, so it's tough. I think the change is interesting. And both versions show that Omaida is pushed into active heroism and neither to, total success, but I liked that Omaida didn't fully run away. It could have been better for him in both versions. It was something, and with a character like this, you really gotta hold on to any little crumb that you can. Still, Omaida is never really given anything more significant than that, and mostly remains a joke. Comic relief characters are fine, but he definitely wasn't gonna be climbing too high on the list. At number 10, I have Momo Hinamori, and I've talked before about how there are few characters that I feel more terrible for than Momo. This lady went through it multiple times, and unfortunately I don't think Momo ever got the payoff I was hoping for her character. I didn't need her to get revenge against Aizen by surprising him and stabbing him through the chest, as satisfying as that might have been, but she was in such an interesting position after Aizen's betrayal, with her mind almost completely shattered and trying to rationalize what happened. And I would have loved to see her have a moment of undeniable heroism and overcoming the damage that Aizen left behind. And yeah, she kind of gets some of that by going to battle during the fake Karakura Town fight, but that was kind of a little undermined by her being hurt by Aizen once again, immediately after, when Hitsugaya is tricked into stabbing her yet again. And after that, unfortunately, Momo really doesn't get any further development, but I do love that she's paired with Shinji as her captain in the final arc. He's obviously a much better person to follow, and one that could maybe understand the cause of her trauma, so that's nice. Really, I just want Momo to be happy and to stop being stabbed by people she trusts, and I think she's finally on her way to at least getting that. At number 9, I have Iba, and Iba is an interesting one because he's someone like Asane that just feels like he never got much time to shine and is mostly in the background, but I do feel like he had a few more standout moments than Asane did, as well as having a very interesting place when it comes to his history. We know Iba used to be part of Squad 11, which gives him a little bit of that flair that the squad is known for when it comes to battle, and also made him have that great moment with Hikaku back in the Rankar arc, where he pretty much was like, you gotta take this seriously. This is not the time or place to be holding back. Really good moment. Love that for him. But yeah, after he leaves Squad 11, throughout the series we see him as Komamura's lieutenant, and the empathy and the understanding that he gave to his captain during Komamura's darkest hour and biggest mistake was really beautiful, and the image of Iba lifting the newly transformed wolf onto his back to help carry on is something that will always be burned into my memory as a great moment, even if it never really got followed up on in a way that satisfied me. Great moment still. Iba's pretty great. Didn't get all that much to do. At number 8, I have Nanao, and Nanao is a character that meant very little to me for most of the series outside of her funny dynamic with Shunsui, but the Thousand Year Blood War took that relationship and really gave it a shocking amount of pathos that involved learning a lot about both of their pasts. Nanao, seeming like this secretarial character without a Zanpakuto, was really given a rewarding answer when we learn the history of her family's heirloom and her Zanpakuto, which Shinsui's been hiding the whole time. And it led to her having such a great standout fight against Baro. She had some amazing moments of development. It's really her first fight, so it was really interesting seeing that. And I never expected her to be involved in such a big battle, but I loved the way it was handled, and all of this with her family history and the deeper connection to her captain really made her stand out so much more than she used to. I'm not going to forget about her anymore, where before I could have easily forgotten she was there, but those were some great moments, and I really appreciated her getting that before the end of the series. At number 7, I have Yashiru. Considering how much I love Kenpachi Zaraki, it would be easy to assume I have his lieutenant really high, but this is where she ends up, because I just like the other characters on the list more. That's not taking anything away from her, especially with everything we learned. Yashiru initially seemed like nothing more than this bubbly girl that clung to Kenny's shoulder and joined him in glee over bloodshed. Just on the surface, by that alone, there was always something intriguing about her. Why was this kid a lieutenant? Who was she when Kenny found her? And when all of that got revealed, it was handled so beautifully and gave an answer that had been there hiding in plain sight all along. She was Kenpachi Zaraki's Zanpakuto spirit, the personification of the sword whose name he didn't know. And it turned out he had something of a bond with his sword still already, even without realizing it. And I love how that reveal was given to us, and that she kind of loses her current form as Kenny's connection with his blade and his own self deepens. Like now Yashiru has to be there for him in a different way than she had been throughout the rest of the series, that he doesn't need her to be physically with him anymore, because he, is looking more internal. Outside of that big reveal of her true nature, Yashiru even got to have a fun little fight with the Vanishing Point, and I loved how it showed her fighting on nothing but instinct, and heck, maybe that was a hint to her true nature. She doesn't care who you are or what she remembers about you. She is a weapon designed to attack and protect, not think, just to handle threats. I loved that. All in all, it was a great twist that maybe I'll analyze more deeply down the road. I'd love to go back and try to find more hints leading in the direction it ended up going. She was really fun, just like her captain, and the secret she was holding was really cool. I liked it a lot. At number 6, I have Azuru. When it comes to my favorites, Azuru has always been in a camp of liking him a lot, but he never quite crossed over into being a personal favorite of mine. Though my recent watch of the new Captain Amagai arc almost pushed him even higher on this list because of giving him a real spotlight. But when it comes to the canon, I think he's pretty interesting, and I love his Zanpakuto's abilities, but he's kind of underutilized. However, what Azuru undeniably has going for him is that in the times when he is given something, it usually involves him delivering some of the coldest moments in the whole series. But yeah, the Thousand Year Blood War didn't really help give Azuru more page time, considering he was killed at the very beginning of the first battle, and toward the end of the series he was reanimated as a dead man for 2 pages, but even that was one of the most badass visuals in all of Bleach. I may have wanted him to stay as a casualty of war, but damn, that moment was maybe worth the revival. So metal. At number 5, I have Hisagi. Hisagi takes a lot of L's, like all the time, especially here in the war, even from his own captain, maybe especially from his own captain. But I've always liked Hisagi. He's cool. He had a fun fight in the Arankar arc. I just think he's a cool presence, even if he really gets beaten up a lot. And since I've been reading Can't Fear Your Own World, I've seen even more of his personality, but I'm trying to keep that kind of out of consideration for this. I'm trying to stick to just the manga's canon. But even without the light novels, I've always loved Hisagi's design and his zanpakuto, and he's had some great moments earlier in the series, and that's enough to carry him pretty high onto the list, even if this final arc didn't give him anything close to the moments he got during the Arankar arc. Still, his general aesthetic was enough to keep him in my top 5 because I just think he's really cool, even if he's not always able to show that. At number 4, I have Rangiku. I've always enjoyed Rangiku. She's got a very fun personality that bounces well off pretty much anyone she interacts with, especially her captain. She's brash and stubborn and loud sometimes, but there's real tragedy and trauma beneath that she tends to bury with booze. She's another lieutenant that doesn't really get a big moment for herself in the final arc, but she was always a steadfast, good presence throughout the whole series, and I consistently enjoyed her character, even if she rarely got to take center stage. I like Rangiku, she's a good character. At number 3, I have Nemu, who has always fascinated me, and I'm glad that that fascination paid off in the end, because Nemu is point for point probably the most interesting of all the lieutenants. Yashiru would be up there in that regard as well, but what gives Nemu the edge and makes her slightly more thought-provoking is that she was intentionally made for this role, it seems, by Mayuri, and that always seemed wild ever since we learned about it, and that came to such a brilliant head against Pernita. Nemu was created artificially by Mayuri. She is not a natural-born Soul Reaper. She was created by a Soul Reaper, and is literally not built to be able to have her own agency, it seems. Throughout the series, she's dutiful and subservient to Mayuri, and for most of Bleach, that is exactly what she is, even at the expense of herself. She doesn't seem to be able to make her own decisions, and is almost robotic. So to see her develop beyond those parameters and beyond her creator's expectations, where he thought she wasn't the perfect experiment because she wasn't evolving and it seemed she had very limited capabilities, to see her instead surprise Mayuri, make her own decisions without his prompts, and to show that she could learn and grow and evolve was so powerful. That's what Mayuri wanted from her but didn't think he succeeded, only to see that it worked. And Nemu was truly a living person that could evolve and change through life experience. As I went into in much more length in the analysis of those chapters, it was all fantastic, and Nemu's sacrifice was beautiful and even opened up Mayuri just a little. And I'm really happy she sort of kind of lives on in some form with her successor in the epilogue. Nemu at number 3, she was just so interesting. At number 2, Renji Abarai. Renji is one of those quintessential rivals turned friend characters who then becomes one of the most reliable people to the main character, and I really didn't like him at first, and I wasn't meant to, but he became such an easy character to root for throughout the series, a classic underdog trying to be better both as a fighter and as a person. He kind of became a regular part of the cast and was a great addition to it, and it was always satisfying whenever Renji managed to pull out a win, or even when he lost but put in such a valiant effort. And that last scene of acknowledging the good Ichigo has done for him was perfect. It capped off all their history and superseded all of their petty competitiveness, encapsulating it with something that never needs to be spoken again, but that they both understand. It was beautiful. I loved that scene, and Renji was a great character with a solid arc, and it's always nice to see a character go a long way and getting what they may not have realized they wanted at the start. Renji was great. He really was. But at number 1, Rukia Kuchiki. I don't think this will be too surprising. I've made it known how much I love Rukia and how great of a second protagonist she was for a while there. While her role may have been reduced a bit over time, she still remained important and wonderful and had some incredible moments of growth throughout the series. Her big Bankai moment in the Thousand Year Blood War was great in a number of ways. Do I wish Rukia had kind of remained as important as she was earlier? Sure, but she never really got left behind. She remained a great character the whole time, no matter her circumstances or position, and I really respect how she handled everything she went through. Had great fights, a great relationship with Ichigo, a fascinating relationship with her brother, great stuff throughout the series. Rukia's phenomenal. She's an amazing character, and I love her so much. She's awesome. So she is definitely the #1 spot here on the list. And I am so proud of her in the epilogue. That is well deserved. And it was great to see. Rukia is the top lieutenant, even though she is no longer a lieutenant anymore. And that'll do it for the list. As always, please leave your favorites below if you want. Again, this is just my personal favorites and least favorites. Don't take it too personally. You're welcome to like anyone I put at the bottom. If you have Okakiba at the top for whatever reason, I respect it. You know, it's your list. That wraps up the lieutenant ranking. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. If you like what you saw, please comment, like, subscribe. If you want to see more, there's plenty of content I have over at Patreon, including manga read-alongs, anime reactions. Very excited for some of the videos coming up. I've got some really fun stuff, I think, for you guys soon. So yeah, I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye.